To humiliate me, my stepmother forced me to get engaged to a beggar. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I never thought my life would take such a cruel turn. I'm Emma Larson, 22, and I've always tried to live quietly, hoping my father, Robert, and my stepmother, Victoria, would treat me like family. But Victoria's jealousy was obvious. She never liked me, and over time I realized her love was fake. She wanted to control me, to make me feel small, and to embarrass me in front of everyone. It started with small comments, little jabs about my choices, my clothes, and my friends. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe I was overreacting. But one evening, everything became clear. Victoria called me into the living room, her face cold and calculating. She said she had a plan to improve my future, but I quickly realized it wasn't about helping me. She told me I would get engaged to a man she chose, someone from a poor background, someone I had never met. She smiled as if this was a game, as if my humiliation was her victory. My heart sank. I couldn't believe my father didn't question her plan. He nodded quietly, trusting her judgment, unaware of the pain in my chest. Victoria described the engagement as a family event, with everyone watching. She wanted me to feel powerless, trapped in front of relatives and friends. I wanted to scream, to refuse, but I also knew arguing wouldn't work. Every word she said was sharp, precise, designed to break my spirit. I realized in that moment that I had two choices: accept her plan and feel crushed, or find a way to protect myself without letting her win. I felt a surge of determination. I would not let Victoria control me. Her plan to humiliate me had backfired before it even began because I decided right then that I wouldn't be a victim. I would find a way to turn this situation around, and no one, not even Victoria, would stop me. After that shocking night, I realized my father, Robert, seemed completely blind to Victoria's cruelty. He didn't see how she treated me, how she planned to humiliate me. Every time I tried to explain my feelings, he just nodded politely, trusting Victoria's judgment. It felt like a betrayal. The person who was supposed to protect me wasn't really seeing the danger I was in. Victoria wasted no time. She told me I had to meet Caleb, a man she described as a suitable match. When I asked about him, she shrugged off my questions, only insisting he came from a humble background and that I needed to learn humility. My stomach twisted. I had never met Caleb, and now I was supposed to pretend this was normal, even as Victoria made it sound like a punishment. The day I met him, Caleb seemed harmless and kind, but I could see the confusion in his eyes when Victoria introduced him to me like he was part of some cruel scheme. I felt trapped. I couldn't refuse without facing Victoria's wrath, and I couldn't trust my father to step in. The man who raised me, the one I believed would defend me, was standing silently by. That betrayal stung more than anything Victoria had done. It didn't stop at our house. Word spread quickly. Friends and relatives started whispering behind my back, asking questions, giving advice I hadn't asked for. Some looked at me with pity, some with judgment. The pressure grew heavier each day. I felt like I was being pushed into a corner, surrounded by people who didn't understand that this was Victoria's plan, not my choice. Every glance and comment reminded me that Victoria's manipulation went further than I thought. She controlled the narrative, and everyone else bought into it. I realized I had to stay strong, not only for myself but for Caleb, who had no idea he was being used as a pawn. Betrayal had taken root in the people I trusted most, and I knew I had to find a way to turn things around before it completely consumed me. Victoria didn't waste any time turning her plan into a full spectacle. She announced that there would be an engagement party, and everyone, family, friends, even distant relatives, was invited. I felt my heart sink as I realized how public this humiliation would be. Every detail, from the decorations to the speeches, was carefully designed to make me feel small. I could see the satisfaction in Victoria's eyes as she directed the arrangements, like she was orchestrating a performance meant only to embarrass me. When I met Caleb that day, he was nervous but kind. He smiled politely and tried to make conversation, but he had no idea what Victoria was planning. He believed this was a genuine engagement, and that made it even harder for me to explain without exposing him to her cruelty. I wanted to warn him, to tell him the truth, but Victoria was watching, and I knew one wrong move would make everything worse for both of us. As guests arrived, whispers followed me everywhere. People commented on my choice of dress, my behavior, and even my expression. Victoria introduced Caleb proudly, presenting him as if this was some clever lesson in humility she was teaching me. Each word she spoke, each glance she gave, made me feel smaller. I couldn't believe that a man like Caleb, who was kind and harmless, was being dragged into this humiliating scheme. I stood there, smiling politely, nodding, pretending to go along with it. But inside, a storm was building. I questioned myself, should I silently endure this, just let Victoria think she won, and hope this nightmare passes? Or should I find a way to fight back, to reclaim my dignity and protect Caleb from being used as a pawn? The thought of remaining powerless was unbearable. As I watched Victoria beam with pride, thinking she had successfully humiliated me, I felt a spark of determination. I realized I didn't have to let her win. There had to be a way to turn this around, to take control of the situation without giving her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. For the first time, I started planning, not in words, but in my mind, how I could quietly outsmart her while keeping Caleb safe. The game had just begun, and I wasn't going to lose. After that humiliating engagement party, I realized I couldn't let Victoria control my life anymore. Every day she tried to push me down, but I decided I would not let her break me. I needed to find my own strength, quietly and carefully, without letting her see that she had failed. I started paying more attention to Caleb. I learned that he had dreams of opening a small bakery in our town, not for fame or money, but to help the community by providing jobs and teaching kids how to bake. The more I listened to him, the more I realized he was kind, hardworking, and genuine. He wasn't a pawn in Victoria's cruel plan, he was a person with his own hopes and ambitions. Understanding Caleb's dreams gave me an idea. If I could help him achieve them, I could turn Victoria's scheme into something positive. I began thinking about ways to support him without raising suspicion. I offered small advice, suggested ideas for his bakery, and quietly encouraged him to pursue his goals. All the while, I kept up the appearance of going along with Victoria's plan, pretending to be powerless while secretly taking steps to protect Caleb. At the same time, I started planning my subtle revenge against Victoria. I knew I couldn't confront her openly yet, she thrived on control and public attention. Instead, I would outsmart her quietly. Every move I made, every decision, was aimed at turning the situation in my favor without her realizing it. I wanted to show her that her attempts to humiliate me would backfire, and she would never see it coming. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of purpose and control. I wasn't just surviving Victoria's cruelty, I was planning to rise above it. Protecting Caleb and helping him reach his dreams became my mission, and it gave me the courage to face each day. I realized that inner strength doesn't come from avoiding hardship, it comes from finding a way to turn even the darkest moments into opportunities for growth and triumph. I realized that to beat Victoria, I had to play her game for now. I pretended to go along with everything she said, smiling and agreeing as if I was still trapped by her plans. She believed she had full control over me, and that made her careless. Every small victory she thought she had only gave me more room to act. While keeping up appearances, I focused on helping Caleb. I spent time with him, showing him small baking techniques and helping him understand how to manage a small business. I gave him tips on pricing, organizing supplies, and planning his bakery in a way that would attract customers. Caleb was eager to learn, and I could see his confidence grow each day. I felt proud knowing I was helping him prepare for a future that Victoria had never imagined. Victoria, of course, grew even more arrogant. She bragged about how she had taught me humility and how the engagement was shaping me into someone grateful for my life. She thought I was powerless, that her plan was working perfectly. Every boast she made, every smug comment, only fueled my determination. I knew she had no idea what I was really doing behind the scenes. Secretly, I started networking to support Caleb's dream. I reached out to local business owners, explained the concept of a small community bakery, and asked for advice and potential investors. I kept everything discreet, making sure Victoria never found out. I even visited supply shops and spoke with suppliers, carefully planning every detail so that when the time came, Caleb's bakery could launch smoothly. This was the turning point. I was no longer just reacting to Victoria's cruelty, I was actively creating my own path and helping someone else achieve their dreams. With every step I took, I felt more in control, more powerful. The same plan that Victoria thought would humiliate me was slowly turning into a tool for success, and she didn't even know it. I was building a future on my own terms, and nothing could stop me now. The moment I had been waiting for came during a family gathering. Victoria, in her usual smug way, started mocking Caleb in front of everyone. She laughed at his humble background, making cruel comments about his clothes, his manners, and even his dreams of opening a bakery. Her words were sharp, meant to humiliate both of us and to show everyone that she had control. But this time I didn't stay silent. I calmly spoke up, defending Caleb. I told the family about the small steps he had already taken toward his bakery, how he had learned new baking techniques, organized his finances, and planned everything carefully. I explained how he had worked hard and shown incredible dedication, all without anyone's help but his own effort and my guidance behind the scenes. My voice was steady, and I could see a few family members starting to question Victoria's cruel behavior. The atmosphere shifted. Whispers spread among the relatives. Some expressed surprise that Victoria had been so harsh and controlling. Others seemed to admire Caleb's determination and the way I had supported him. The tables were slowly turning, and Victoria realized that her plan to humiliate us was backfiring. She tried to regain control, offering excuses and trying to laugh it off, but the tension in the room made it clear that people were no longer convinced by her act. Victoria's facade began to crack, though she refused to give up completely. Her arrogance remained, but the confidence she had displayed earlier was weakening. I could see frustration flicker in her eyes as family members started questioning her motives and her treatment of me and Caleb. For the first time, I felt a sense of vindication. All the planning, patience, and careful moves I had made behind the scenes were starting to pay off. I had stood up for Caleb and for myself, and the family was beginning to see Victoria for who she really was. Her control over the situation was slipping, and I knew this was only the beginning of turning everything in our favor. The game had shifted, and now it was our turn. I knew it was time to take the next step. Quietly, I started reaching out to my father's old business contacts, the people he trusted years ago. I didn't tell Victoria or anyone else what I was doing. My goal was simple: secure funding for Caleb's bakery so it could become more than just a small dream, it could be a real, successful business. I also contacted potential investors and invited them to see Caleb's progress. To make sure Victoria didn't interfere, I kept everything secret. I even arranged for local press to cover the story once the bakery was ready. Every detail was carefully planned, from the layout of the shop to the quality of the products, so that when it opened, it would make a strong impression. When the bakery finally launched, it was more successful than I had imagined. People from the community came to try Caleb's baked goods, and word quickly spread. The press highlighted his hard work and the positive impact the bakery had on local families. It was incredible to see him shine, confident and proud, while I stood quietly in the background, knowing how far we had come. Victoria, of course, couldn't ignore the attention. She walked past the bakery one day, expecting to see failure or humiliation, but instead she saw lines of customers and reporters taking photos. Her eyes widened as she realized that her plan to embarrass me had completely backfired. Everything she had hoped would make me look powerless had been transformed into a public success that brought admiration and respect. It was a strange feeling, watching her struggle to hide her frustration. She had tried to humiliate me, to control my life, and yet the exact situation she orchestrated had turned into proof of my strength and determination. For the first time, I felt completely in control of the story. The humiliation she planned was now a triumph, not just for Caleb and me, but for everyone who had doubted us. Seeing Victoria finally confronted with the consequences of her cruelty gave me a quiet satisfaction. I had taken her worst attempt to humiliate me and turned it into something positive, something she could never undo. It was more than revenge, it was proof that I could protect myself, help someone else succeed, and rise above the cruelty that had been forced upon me. The day the bakery officially opened was unforgettable. Neighbors, friends, and even some local media showed up to celebrate Caleb's achievement. People praised his hard work and dedication, but many also recognized the quiet support I had given him behind the scenes. It was a moment of pride, seeing something positive come out of what had started as a humiliating plan by Victoria. Victoria tried to downplay the success. She made snide remarks, muttering about how anyone could have done it or claiming it wasn't as big of a deal as people made it out to be. But no one believed her. The excitement in the community, the lines of customers at the bakery, and the local news coverage made it impossible for her to dismiss. Her words held no power anymore, and her frustration was obvious to everyone. As for me, I finally felt a strong sense of self-respect. I had taken control of my life, supported Caleb's dreams, and turned a plan meant to humiliate me into a triumph. People started recognizing me not as the victim of Victoria's schemes, but as someone capable, intelligent, and determined. Their admiration made the long struggle feel worthwhile. I could see Victoria growing smaller in the eyes of everyone around her. Even my father, Robert, could no longer ignore what had happened. He watched the bakery's success and saw the respect Caleb and I had earned. Slowly, he realized how blind he had been to Victoria's cruelty and manipulations over the years. There was regret in his eyes, the kind that comes from realizing you should have believed someone you love sooner. He approached me quietly later, apologizing for not trusting me and acknowledging Victoria's role in trying to control my life. Watching Victoria face social embarrassment while Caleb and I received praise was deeply satisfying. It wasn't just revenge, it was justice served through effort, courage, and careful planning. The humiliation she had tried to force on me had completely reversed. In that moment, I understood that true triumph isn't about hurting someone back, it's about rising above their cruelty and creating something meaningful. The bakery wasn't just a business, it was proof that resilience and determination can turn even the darkest intentions into victory. After the bakery's success, I knew it was time to face Victoria directly. I asked her to meet me alone in the living room, away from everyone else. I wanted to speak calmly, without anger, and explain exactly how I had turned her plan against her. I told her how I had secretly helped Caleb, reached out to investors, and used every opportunity she had given me to create something positive instead of allowing her to humiliate me. Victoria's face flushed with anger as I spoke. She opened her mouth, trying to argue, to say something that would make me feel guilty or small. But I didn't flinch. I stayed calm and steady, making it clear that her manipulations had failed. After a few tense moments, she stopped speaking, realizing she couldn't refute what I had done. She silently accepted defeat, her arrogance replaced by quiet frustration. For the first time, she couldn't control the narrative or make me feel powerless. Meanwhile, Caleb openly thanked me in front of everyone at the bakery. He expressed how much he appreciated my belief in him, how my guidance had helped him reach his dream, and how I had protected him from being used in Victoria's cruel plan. Hearing him speak with such sincerity filled me with a sense of pride I had never experienced before. It wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about creating something meaningful and supporting someone who deserved it. I finally felt fully empowered. I no longer depended on my father to see the truth or to protect me. I no longer allowed Victoria's cruelty to define my life. I had proven to myself that I could take control, make smart decisions, and achieve my goals despite the obstacles thrown at me. For the first time, I felt completely free from the fear and humiliation Victoria had tried to impose. That private confrontation gave me emotional closure. I didn't need to yell, argue, or show her anger. Simply standing firm, calmly explaining the truth, and watching her accept defeat silently was enough. I knew I had outsmarted her, protected Caleb, and reclaimed my life. It was the final moment of strength I needed to move forward with confidence, dignity, and peace. After everything that had happened, Caleb and I grew closer. What had started as a forced engagement turned into a genuine bond built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. We laughed together, worked together on the bakery, and supported each other in ways neither of us expected. The connection between us was real, far beyond the plan Victoria had tried to impose. Victoria, on the other hand, became increasingly isolated. Her cruel actions and manipulations were no longer tolerated or admired. People in the community, friends, and even some family members began keeping their distance. Her attempts to control and humiliate me had completely failed, and her power over my life was gone. I no longer feared her or allowed her presence to affect my decisions. Her influence had ended, and with it, her control over our lives. My father, Robert, slowly began to reconcile with me. He admitted his mistakes and realized he had been too trusting of Victoria, too blind to see her cruelty. We talked openly about what had happened, and he promised to put love and honesty above manipulation in the future. It was healing to hear him acknowledge his faults and commit to supporting me as his daughter, without letting Victoria interfere. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen and understood by him. Looking back, I reflected on everything I had gone through. Betrayal had been painful, but it had awakened a strength in me I didn't know I had. I learned that resilience isn't just surviving difficult times, it's using them to grow, to protect yourself, and to help others along the way. Turning humiliation into triumph was one of the most satisfying experiences of my life. I realized that even when people try to break you, you have the power to rise above them and create your own path. In the end, I felt proud, confident, and free. The lessons I learned from Victoria's betrayal shaped me into someone stronger, wiser, and more determined to live life on my own terms. I had taken control, found love and trust in unexpected places, and proven that no one could define my worth or my future except me.